They say the woods are empty at night. They're wrong. Not for her, not for him. Something is watching. And it's patient, waiting. Always waiting. Emily and her friends were looking for a weekend escape. They found a small cabin, nestled deep in the forest, far from any roads or towns. It was the kind of place that horror stories are made of, the kind of place people warn you about. But of course, no one ever listens. The first night was perfect. They gathered around a roaring campfire, sharing stories and laughing under a sky full of stars. The crackling flames danced, casting long shadows that stretched into the trees. They were so caught up in their own little world, they didn't hear the first whisper carried on the wind. It was faint, almost like the rustle of leaves, easy to dismiss. Then came the scratching. It started at the edge of the clearing, a dry, scraping sound against bark. Like an animal, they thought, a raccoon, maybe a deer. But this sound was different. It was methodical, rhythmic. It seemed to be circling them, just beyond the reach of the firelight. The laughter died down, replaced by uneasy silence, every ear strained to listen. The scratching stopped as suddenly as it began, but the feeling of being watched remained, a cold prickle on the back of their necks. Back inside the cabin, they tried to brush it off. "It's just the woods," one of them said, a little too loudly. "This place is probably full of strange noises." They locked the door, pulled the curtains tight, and tried to rekindle the cheerful mood. But the atmosphere had shifted. The cozy cabin now felt like a trap. That's when the subtle things began. A flicker of movement caught in the corner of Emily's eye, a shadow passing by the window that was too tall, too thin to be an animal. A branch snapped outside, not with the gentle crack of old wood, but with a sharp, deliberate break, as if someone had stepped on it. Emily tried to convince herself it was just her imagination, that the darkness was playing tricks on her. But then the laughter from her friends stopped completely. Everyone had felt it. The air grew heavy, thick with a tension you could almost taste. One of her friends pulled out his phone. "No signal," he announced, his voice flat. "Not a single bar." Another friend went to add more logs to the fireplace, but the flames seemed to be shrinking. The warmth receding faster than it should, as if something outside was drawing all the heat, all the life, out of the room. And then the knocks started. They weren't frantic or hurried. They were slow, deliberate. 3 heavy thuds on the solid oak door. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone froze. They looked at each other, eyes wide with a question no one dared to ask. Who could possibly be out there? After a long, tense moment, the knocking came again, this time on the back wall of the cabin, with the same measured, powerful rhythm. It was moving. It was circling them again. The fear in the room was palpable. It was no longer about strange noises or overactive imaginations. This was real. Something was outside, and it wanted in. One of her friends, Mark, the bravest or, be the most foolish of the group, had had enough. "I'm going to see what that is," he declared, grabbing a heavy iron poker from the fireplace. The others pleaded with him not to go, to just wait until morning, but he was determined. He slid the bolt on the door and pulled it open just a crack, peering into the inky blackness. For a second, there was nothing. Then, a sudden gust of wind slammed the door wide open, throwing Mark off balance. Before anyone could react, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang that echoed through the cabin. The bolt clicked locked from the outside. They rushed to the door, yelling Mark's name, twisting the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was as if it were sealed shut. They screamed his name into the night, but the only reply was the whistling of the wind through the trees. No one saw him again. Panic erupted. Raw, animal terror took over. They ran to the windows, trying to pry them open, but they were screwed shut. They tried calling for help again, their voices hoarse, knowing it was useless. They were completely cut off. Every shadow in the room seemed to twist and move, taking on a life of its own. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a footstep. Emily backed into a corner, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at her terrified friends, huddled together, and a horrifying realization dawned on her. They weren't just lost in the woods. They hadn't just stumbled upon something dangerous. They were inside someone else's game, and the rules were not in their favor. The scratching sound returned, but this time it wasn't outside. It was inside the walls. A frantic, scraping noise that moved around them, as if a trapped animal was trying to claw its way out. Then, the scratching morphed into a voice. A dry, rasping whisper that slithered out from the cracks in the wooden planks. It whispered their names. It knew them. It whispered their deepest secrets, things they had never told anyone. A private fear, a past mistake, a hidden guilt. The voice echoed their own thoughts, twisting their personal demons into weapons against them. It was a violation of the deepest kind, stripping them bare and leaving them exposed and terrified. How could it know? How was this possible? And then, absolute silence. The whispering stopped, the scratching ceased, the wind died down. There was no sound at all, not a cricket, not a rustle of leaves, nothing. The silence was heavier, more terrifying than any noise had been. It was a waiting silence, a predator's silence. Nothing moved, nothing breathed, but Emily could feel it. She could feel its presence pressing in on all sides of the cabin. It was there, waiting, watching, and somewhere in the crushing darkness, she was certain, it was smiling. The sun finally rose, its weak light filtering through the dusty windows. The cabin looked normal. The forest outside was calm, almost peaceful. The door was unlocked. Cautiously, Emily and her remaining friends stumbled outside, blinking in the daylight, expecting to find something, anything, but there was no sign of a struggle, no sign of Mark. As they turned to take one last look at the cabin that had been their prison, they saw it. Scrawled across the wooden wall in thick, dark mud were 4 words that would haunt them forever. See you next time. Emily never went back to the woods. And according to the locals in the nearest town, neither did anyone who rented that cabin after them. Some places are best left alone. Some stories are warnings. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there.